Hey guys, it's Mike here from The Art of Guitar, here with another one of my favorite guitar players, Slash. We get a lot of requests for Slash, and I just thought I would throw together some of his techniques, some of my favorite techniques of his, and bring them to you guys. Oh, by the way, my friend Mike Berg lent me his Les Paul for this lesson, and I'm really grateful because he can't do a Slash lesson without a Les Paul. I kind of thought about, should I use my SG? Should I use something else? And I found out that Slash did use an SG, but it was a double neck, and I don't have one of those. I want to have one of those someday. Those are pretty cool. So thank you to him for letting me use this Les Paul. Otherwise, I wouldn't have done this lesson. Okay, let's get started with Slash. One thing I noticed about all of his playing so far that I've heard is that he's tuned down half a step. So if you guys don't know how to do that, we do teach it on the website, theartofguitar.com. But real quick, I'll just kind of yell out the string names. So your E is going to be tuned down a half step. Remember, a half step is 1 fret difference. A whole step is 2 frets, so we're just down a half step. So your low E is actually going to be D sharp now, according to tuners. Some people call it E flat, but we'll call it D sharp. The 5th string, A, is going to be G sharp. The D string, the 4th string, is going to be C sharp now. The G string is going to be F sharp. The 2nd string, B, is going to be A sharp. And then the 1st string, E, is going to be D sharp, just like the 6th string. So everything's going to be down half a step. Okay, there's a few things Slash likes to use that we're going to show in a little bit, like certain effects. And I'm not going to worry too much about those at this point, but if you hear me using some effects, just realize I'm going to explain them in a little bit, but I just maybe needed them a little bit for some of these techniques. The first thing I want to show you guys is his use of diatonic modes. He uses diatonic scales, and if you guys don't know what that means, instead of playing pentatonic, which a lot of guitar players do, a lot of the classic rock players do a lot, Slash does use pentatonic, which is a 5-note scale, but he also likes to dive into the full diatonic 7-note scale. And for this example, we're going to use a mode called the Mixolydian mode, and we'll put up the tab for it so you can learn it, but in the future, if you want to learn more about what modes mean and everything like that, once again, visit the website. Okay, so let's check it out. We're going to play D Mixolydian, but we're going to actually play it kind of up high on the neck here. And for this example, I'm going to go to the front pickup, the neck pickup, because a lot of Slash's playing sounds like it's on the neck pickup. It's got that real thick, I don't know how else to explain it, but I always say it sounds like a cuppy type sound. I don't know how to explain that really, but check it out. It's kind of throaty, cuppy sound. I don't even know what cuppy means, but that's just an adjective I made up, I guess. Okay, so let's go to the 12th fret, 4th string, which is D. And then we're just going to go up the Mixolydian scale. If you guys are familiar with that, it's a major scale with a flatted 7th. So we have D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C, D. So if you're used to the major scale, you probably were expecting this. But since it's Mixolydian, it's a special mode, we're going to sound like this. Don't worry, it'll all make sense in a little bit. Okay, so for this specific example, we're talking about Sweet Child of Mine, the sounds he gets in that song. He likes to utilize that diatonic mode, but he also is really good at bending and sliding within that mode instead of just doing, like I said before, all pentatonics. So here's an example of using some half-step bends, some whole step bends, and some slides in order to achieve some good sounds within that mode. So we're going to go... Then later he goes. That's a great sound. Did you recognize the half-step bends in there? That's very, very important for his style of music, for the way he plays. Those little half steps are very valuable, as opposed to doing full step bends all the time, which a lot of people like to do. So, for example, if they're in this position, a lot of people do full step bends. So does Slash, but he throws in these half-step bends that sound really great. Now, if you're playing in the Mixolydian mode, it's really fun, in this case, to go to the 3rd string, 11th fret. And we're going to bend it up to what the 12th fret would sound like. So check this out. And with the half step down tuning, that gets a lot easier to do. All bends do, actually. So in this case, I like to pull the string towards the floor just a little bit and really measure it by going up to the 12th fret and listening, coming back, hitting it, and getting back to that sound. And of course vibrato if you want to. So whether you bend it up or down, it's up to you, but make sure that it's only a half step in certain situations, okay? It might not seem like that big of a deal, but when you start to use it in the solos, it's actually pretty cool. Check this out. Very expressive in a different sort of way. Okay, now keep in mind, because we're tuned down half a step, everything's not going to be what I say. You know, I'm used to, when I'm hitting a certain fret, calling this E, but since it's a half step down, it's actually going to be E flat. But, you know, for the sake of this video, I'm assuming you're not playing along to a piano player or something right now, so you'll just understand what I mean when I say E, you know, even though it's going to actually sound half step lower. Okay? That's just a little disclaimer. Okay, the next thing we're going to study that I like to hear from Slash is his use of, it's basically like a double rake that he does sometimes before he hits a note. And it's a good way to come into a certain part. It really gives it some power. And it also shows that Slash has a really good sense of rhythm when he plays. So when you get this kind of slashy sound, that's fine. So that's only on, that's like in a rhythm sense. That's one way to do it. But what I'm talking about is doing it right before you go into a lead phrase. So let's take kind of a Paradise City approach to this. And I'm going to use a little bit of the effect, like I told you earlier. I was going to start to use some of his signature effects, in this case a wah pedal, which we'll talk about later. And check out the difference if you do the muting in the beginning, the scratches, and versus when you don't use it, okay? So if I just went like this, it's one thing. But if you go, you don't have to use it just on that part. You could use that technique anytime you kick into a solo or a bend of any kind or even a chord. So here's an example of just some bends using that idea. It's kind of fun. And better yet, try to use them before chords just to make an epic intro. One thing I noticed Slash likes to do, he uses a couple motifs a lot, and one that's really great, I think it's in Patience he uses it, but it's where you take the pentatonic scale, and we basically bend the first note, play the next two, and come back to the bend. Here's what I mean by that. It's a great sound. It's very simple, but it's very musical, which is my favorite things to do these days. I used to like to just shred it up. Now it's about, can I do something musical that's actually pretty easy to do? In this case, if we took A minor pentatonic, we're back to pentatonics, and we went to the 3rd string, 7th fret, and we bent it up a whole step. Then we go to the 2nd string, and we just basically play the 5th fret to the 8th fret. Go back to the original bend, and then we can end anywhere we want. I'll just end on the 5th fret of that 3rd string. Now we could try it in different keys. Let's go up to E minor pentatonic. Love the sound of this guitar. It's so cool. Okay, then we're going to go to, now I have to buy a Les Paul. Okay, now we're going to go down to the open position where it's possible to do as well. Okay, throw that in whenever there's a pentatonic possibility. Sounds really good. And then if you want to get fancy with it, you could do another thing Slash does, which he does some circular techniques. I call it circular. It's also known as motifs, where it's just a repeating pattern. But you could also pick it in a way that it just keeps rotating around and around. That's why I call it a circular technique. Watch as I do the first 3 notes that we were just talking about, but I keep going with it. Now, I don't know how Slash picks that. When I hear him do it, it's really fast. I like to go down, down, up for my technique, but he might be doing some other picking technique, I'm not really sure. And that would be a really good time to talk about when you watch Slash play, he doesn't really use his pinky as much as I do. I just started using my pinky early in life, so I use it all the time, but he's really good at using his first 3 fingers. So if you see him doing this, he's probably going like this. It's the truth with a lot of guitar players like Eric Clapton or Jimmy Page. If you watch them, they have this hand position quite a bit, and this is a little more rare because I think they feel the power in these fingers and they're just used to it. So going a little bit against what I was talking about earlier about the half-step bends and how Slash likes to use those very little subtle bends to make a point, sometimes he'll overdo a bend actually to really kick it home. I don't really know if he's really thinking about what he's doing, but sometimes he'll do a full step bend, and at the very end he'll just jack it up just a hair, just to give it a little more extra sound, a little more excitement. So let's say I'm doing a bend, it doesn't really matter where, I'll just do D minor pentatonic because I barely ever do that. And I'm going to do some bends, very typical sounding bends, but then at the very end I'm going to give it a last little kick just to do the Slash thing, okay? So check this out. So people might say, well, you're just doing step and a half bends, but I don't think he's really measuring it out like that. Because the way it sounds like he's just going for a full step bend, and then he just gets a little excited at the end, and it ends up pushing the note up just a hair. So it might just be a step and a quarter bend. We'll go with that because it sounds legit. Okay, this is a lot of fun. When I first started guitar, I wanted to be crazy shredder. So I went through those days and did a lot of practicing, and one thing that we did all the time in lessons was descending patterns. And so a really good thing to practice just overall is different sequences. And what I hear Slash do, especially at the end of like Paradise City and a couple other solos where he's really going nuts, is he likes to do groups of 4. So we'll teach this, might as well do this in the key of A, just because it's in the middle of the neck. I love doing that. And let's go ahead and do the 3-note per string scale. If you guys remember that, it's basically going to be 5th fret, 7th fret, 9th fret. The same thing on the next string, so we have this so far. The next string's going to be 6, 7, 9. And the next one the same thing. Then the last 2 strings, we're going to have 7, 9, 10. Now, the pattern we're going to do is going to be 4s. And like I said, if you go to Paradise City and hear him shredding out, you'll hear him doing this. He doesn't really pick every single note like we're going to right now. He does a combination of pull-offs, but I really urge that you put this into your playing, and you won't be sorry. You'll be able to pull off some really exciting sounding licks, okay? So, and you'll gain a brand new control over your right hand, because your right hand will just be solid from having to do these patterns, okay? So what we're going to do is we're just going to start at the lowest part of it on A, and we're going to climb up 4 notes. Then we're going to go to the 2nd note of the scale, climb up 4 notes, 3rd of the scale, go up 4, and so on. And here's what it sounds like. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it. You can go to the website for that, but check out how awesome this can feel and sound. We're alternate picking the whole thing. Now once you get to the top, we just go backwards. This is actually a lot more challenging. And you can get to the point where you're just flying through this. Once you get the feel right of the 4s. So it can get pretty shreddy if you get used to it. What Slash does in one of the songs is he's doing a descending pattern using the wah pedal. But watch, even if I do it slow with the wah pedal, it sounds pretty cool. Alright, one really cool thing Slash does, well not just one, he does a whole bunch, is his use of chromatics. And when he throws those in, it really catches my ear. It's because we're so used to hearing scales from people that when somebody kind of breaks the rules a little bit and throws in chromaticism, if you don't know what that means, if you've ever done the chromatic scale, it's basically just where you go from half step to half step, climbing or descending. So here's what it would sound like. You can literally say this is a chromatic scale. Although, you know, it's just kind of a side joke, guitar player humor. But a chromatic scale is just where you start somewhere and you keep climbing by half a step. Usually guitar players play it like this. That would be considered a chromatic scale. Now it looks like my fingers are doing some weird backwards movement, but really the notes are going up a half a step each time, okay? So chromatic includes every color, so chromatic. Now, he's not going to use all of those notes like that, but he'll just throw in a chromatic passage here and there just to sort of tie things together in a cool way. So one song in particular, Civil War, which has a lot of great guitar playing in it, he does this cool thing, I believe it's in this key, where he goes... So that's not very typical to play one note and then go to the next fret and then go to the next fret. So it kind of gives it a really unique sound. He's also using it a lot in the blues scale context, where he'll just be playing something, he'll do like a... One thing Slash said before that I really liked, I use it all the time when I'm teaching, it's, as long as you start on the right note and end on the right note, whatever you play in between doesn't really matter. And I like to use that context sometimes, or I like to use that philosophy sometimes, not all the time, but in essence, he's right. If there's chaos in the middle of two correct notes, sometimes you end up just sounding just fine. So in this case, I'm using chromaticisms anywhere during the pentatonic scale, anywhere between the 5th and 7ths that I'm playing. Now, just like some of our other artists that we covered, I really am finding out that a lot of them use the same techniques. And one of those is the double string bends. Slash uses them all the time. I went all the way back to the early stuff, went through their entire collection, and you hear it in almost every song that he's playing in. So what happens is a lot of people are used to just single string bends. But if you ever want to spice that up a little bit, do the same thing, but just go to the next string. So here we're going to go to the 2nd string, 7th fret, and we're basically going to do 2 7th frets at the same time, and we're going to bar our ring finger flat across those two, and the other fingers are behind it to sort of support it, but we're going to be bending those suckers down, okay? Not up, you can, but it feels just awkward. Down, dragging them across the fret, coming back, and then ending off on the double 5th frets here. So the 5th fret on the 2nd string, 5th fret on the 3rd string. So some of you guys may not have seen the other videos that we covered for techniques for certain artists, but so if you haven't, this is for you. All right, so we have double 7s, double 5s, if you want to think of it that way. We're still in A minor pentatonic. And I'm going to go to the treble pickup for this so it really cuts through. Check it out. You probably hear a lot of Jimmy Page in there, some Kirk Hammett, all those guys. If you don't do that, it sounds like this. But with the double string bends. Okay, a really cool way to connect different parts of the neck are with what I call octave slides. And an octave slide is used, once again, it's one of those techniques that everybody likes to use, it seems like. But if you could form an octave on 2 strings, in this case we'll go 5th string and 3rd string. We'll just go 5th fret, 7th fret like that. And I'm just going to try to play those 2 notes. A lot of people ask, how do you only play those 2 notes if there's a string in between those fingers? And what I tell them is I take my first finger and I just touch the string that's in the middle just slightly to kill it. So there's going to be like an X on the tab for it. And then what you do is you play those 2 notes, you mute all the other strings, and you just start sliding around. Check this out. It's already a cool sound, but if you add wah to that, a really cool thing to break up the monotony of some scales. You know how sometimes you get caught in a form and you just want to stay there because you feel pretty safe and comfortable there. By the way, if your guitar playing starts feeling too safe, that's not a good sign. You want to sometimes break out and try something new. One thing Slash does is, let's say we're taking a G major scale. So if you're not familiar with that, we're going to do it up here. We use the Cage system, and I talk about form numbers. So in this case, I'm going to talk about the 3rd form. If you want to learn more about that, visit the website. Okay, so if we were to play this scale, it would sound like this. Let's go with the front pickup because it sounds so good today. Okay, that's G major. Now, let's say I'm soloing that like Slash often does. Well, sometimes, like I said, you get a little bit caught up in a form and you want to break out of it. Well, what I like to do then is take one string from the scale and just start descending on that string. Sometimes it brings you to a new area where you can maybe an octave lower or just a little bit lower, and you could try brand new things from there. So you have to get to know the scale really well. And if you know the G scale, we'll start here on the 3rd string, 12th fret, and we'll just descend, okay? So we have G, half step back is F sharp, whole step back is E, whole step back is D, whole step C, half step B, whole step A, open G. So that's kind of our elevator that we could take when we want to go from here down to here somewhere, okay? So a cool way to do that, let's say if you're just doing some soloing. That actually sounded like something that he did. Was it Knocking on Heaven's Door, probably? Something like that. Adding major third notes to your minor scales are actually a really cool way to boost up your blues sound a little bit. And we're going to use E minor pentatonic for a second. That's E minor. I have trouble saying E for some reason. It always sounds like I'm saying A. So what we're going to do is we're going to just play minor pentatonic using 2 forms. So here's going to be the main form. So we're starting at the 12th fret of the E string, and we're just playing the minor pentatonic scale we all know and love. But I'm going to actually slip into the next one, which is connected to it. So let's say you're just playing in minor pentatonic a little bit. And you want to go like maybe up higher. Well, instead of going like this, instead of hitting G here, I'm going to hit the G sharp. So all we did was we took the 3rd string, 12th fret, and we played it at the 13th fret instead. Now we're going to do this in a very blatant way. We're actually going to hammer on from the 12 to the 13, minor third to major third, and then go right to the next couple strings for the 12s. So it's... That's one way to use it. Another way, which Jimmy Page uses this way as well, but I heard Slash do it in a very blatant way. It sounded awesome. He went up to the next form. Instead of going like this, he went... Hear the difference in sound? So if I went to the minor third interval, which in this case it's the G note, it sounds that way, but if I add the G sharp, the major third instead of the G, you get a different sound out of it. Now let's put it a little bit more into like a soloing context. So let's say I'm going... It 3 times there. A really cool way to spice up some of your chords, for example, in this case E, is to play the low notes a lot. You know, whenever you're doing heavy rhythms, you want to stay down the low strings. But to open it up a bit, sometimes it's cool to reach down, do an upstroke on the highest 2 strings. And if you're already playing an E major chord or even just the E power chord, it's really cool to just kind of reach over and hit these 2 strings. So it's your high E and your high B, and it just adds this texture over the top. It sounds really cool. So I use it in a couple different songs. He uses it in It's So Easy and a few more times in other songs, but here's a context that's not a Guns N' Roses context, but here's how it sounds. So whether it's Bob Seger, whether it's Creedence Clearwater Revival, it's that concept. Actually, that sounded like ZZ Top there, didn't it? The hard part is just being able to get your pick down there and upstroke just those 2 strings. So you got to practice that quite a bit. Your hand feels like it's going all over the place, but it's a good exercise for you. Another thing that I like that Slash does is sometimes he'll be doing a really fast run. Let's say we're going to be in G blues scale this time. Remember, the blues scale is just the minor pentatonic with a flatted 5th added to it. So if you're not sure about that scale, we could look it up or, just check out the site. Okay, so I'm going to play just the scale one time. Now I kind of did it there, the next technique, which is palm muting when you get to the lower part of this of the scale. You don't always want to palm mute when you're on the high end of a scale because it sounds a little bit weird on the first couple strings. It'd be like going... It's a little too choppy. But if you leave that side open when you're playing, by the way, palm muting is all about taking the side of your palm. It's actually right here. So people think palm muting, they think here. It's actually the side of the hand, but side of the hand muting sounds weird. And I basically karate chop the strings right where the bridge and where the bridge and the string is right here. And I put my side of my hand here, and then I curve my hand over to get that kind of muted sound. So check this out. I did learn that early on because bands like Metallica use that all the time. So palm muting is very valuable. I suggest you practice that quite a bit for your rhythms. Now, when you're doing certain scale runs, when you get to the bottom, sometimes you want to add the palm mute to really tighten it up. It makes it sound really, it's like you're really digging in, okay? Check this out. One cool trick that I like to use a lot that Slash uses is the pre-bends. And you might already know what that means, but you know, David Gilmour uses them quite a bit that we did in that video. If you ever want to try a pre-bend, it's fun. Just go somewhere where you normally would bend and bend it first, hit the note, and then release it. It's a really great sound. So instead of going like this, pre-bend the note. Hear that sound? You shouldn't hear too much. Pick it while it's up, and then drop it down. It's kind of got like a slide effect. If like you ever used a slide on your guitar, it's like you're not there, like there's no frets. It's just real smooth sound going down. So that's a cool way to do that with bends. Pre-bend, play the note, and let it come down. You'll hear it a lot when people want to make their guitar sound like it's kind of like weeping while my guitar gently weeps. Check this out. You could do it up high. Okay, I think this bend is on every single video so far, but if you haven't seen the other ones, it's the Unison Bends. I'll just do this really quick since it is on the other videos. What we do is we just go to, say, the 2nd string, 5th fret, and we play that note. So that's E in this case, well, E flat. And then if we go to the 3rd string, 7th fret with our other fingers, the idea is to bend the 3rd string up a whole step while keeping this E where it is. And what you do, since this note here is a D and you're bending it up to an E, you're eventually getting to the unison point where it's going to hit the same note with both sounds. But in doing so, there's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of harmonic noise kind of happening, clashing, speeding up, slowing down. But the reason why so many of the classic guitar players use it is because it takes up a lot of space, a lot of sound. Let's move it around a little bit. Add that to some of the other things. You know, you could do pre-bends, you could do the wah pedal with it. Sounds really good with the wah. If you listen to a lot of Slash's playing, you'll realize that he loves to do arpeggios. What arpeggio is, it's just basically a chord played one note at a time. But he's really good at making the lower side of the arpeggio sound great. Some people love to do the higher side of arpeggios. For example, you would hear somebody do stuff like... kind of Boston thing or something right there. But what I hear Slash doing a lot, it's kind of like Freebird in a way, the beginning, where you have like a G chord, and instead of playing chord, he'll do that, by the way, too. He likes to arpeggiate. Gives it kind of that Western sound. You know, I wasn't intentionally playing it sound like Civil War a little bit, Civil War, but I was kind of combining that with Freebird. You get the idea. You basically just play chords and you play the lower notes by playing the strings one at a time. Now when you're starting out, don't be afraid to just do all downstrokes. Totally fine. But when you get better, you want to start using alternate picking so that you have a little bit more of a flowing sound. So you might go like this. Okay, so if you're tired of pentatonic scales, we're going to go into E minor pentatonic just for a second, okay? Let's say you've got a little bit sick of it, you're tapped out on your minor pentatonic licks, you're doing all this kind of stuff. Well, do what Slash does. Go ahead and add a couple of diatonic tones, namely, in this case, the F sharp. So we get this. So it's funny, even if you add that one note to the pentatonic scale, you basically open up a whole new world of possibilities. So what Slash likes to do, let's say he's using his wah, he'll be going like this. So now I'm trying to play like him with 3 fingers, but you get the idea. So instead of just doing 12 to 15, which we're all used to doing, what we end up doing now is we add that F sharp to it, and it's very interesting sounding because in minor pentatonic, that's the second interval. You see what that does for you? It's kind of interesting if you really think about it. By adding that one note to that everyday overused type situation, you end up with different possibilities. So what I did was I started here, went to that F sharp, that allows you to do different kinds of bends as well. So check it out, I'll go to the F sharp, bend it a half step to the G. This takes us back to the half step lesson. Maybe I'll work my way up. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you learned a lot from this video. Don't forget to subscribe and to check out our website, theartofguitar.com, and you could sign up for lessons there too, and that'd be great. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.